Yo guys, what is going on? Insanity coming back at you today with another Division 2 video, and today we're going to be doing a state of the game recap for April 17th, 2019. The biggest thing here, I'm going to go ahead and just jump straight into all the biggest news sections that we can possibly get into before we get into the much little smaller things that we can go ahead and talk about each individual little thing as we go along. But more importantly, for everyone out there over on PC, all you PC Division 2 players, you now have access to the public test server. PTS for update 3.0 has begun today. There's going to be a lot of balancing changes. There's been a lot of talk over on Twitter and also the Twitch chat and everything else that's been going on today. There's a lot of talents, a lot of nerfs, a couple of buffs. Some things are completely messed up and crazy, but they want your feedback. They want to know exactly what needs to be changed, how to fix it, and how to make update 3.0 awesome. And that goes into this next little bit here. And if you were looking at the thumbnail and the title, you already know what I'm going to say. The raid has been delayed until May. We don't have any specific dates or anything like that, but until update 3.0 is ready to rock and roll with the most balanced possible gear and talents and weapons that they can possibly have, they don't want to go ahead and throw you straight into the most challenging activity the division has ever had with a broken experience. They want to make sure that they have a much more balanced and working experience that will all players are going to be able to go ahead and jump in and enjoy, not by making the game easier, but by making it better. So yeah, all right, so what happened during state of the game? Let's just go ahead and jump straight on into it. All right guys, the balance updates that are coming to update 3.0 are massive. There, no pun intended. There is a ton of stuff that is coming into the world of PvE, PvP, weapon balances, gears changing, talents changing, damage changes, just all this stuff. And I'm just going to go ahead and just try and give you a nice little overview of everything that was said, because it's a lot and it's a lot to take in. So let's just go ahead and start with this. Let's start with the dark zones. We're going to go ahead and start with normalized dark zones here first. Basically, they are now going to set it so that normalization is going to be set to the max world tier of 500. So all stats, if you have that critical hit chance, if you got that weapon damage, all those things are going to be pushed on up to the highest world tier at level 500. So there you go with that. PV damage is now being taken down from 70% to 40%. So that is something that's going to make little engagements a little bit longer. It's not going to be just dead. That's it. It's over. It's going to be a lot more fun in that scenario to try and actually have gunfights and not just one-sided, you know, complete steamrolls in that situation. Skill damage is being increased from 20% to 25%. And they have the ability now to tune weapons specifically for PvP damage, like assault rifle damage, SMG damage, rifle damage, things like that, to try and make it so that weapons are balanced accordingly in PvP scenarios. Crit is being completely removed from hipfire in normalized and occupied dark zones. They made it very, very clear that you can crit all day long in PvE if you want, but the moment you start getting in PvP activities, that is that. Crit from hipfire is completely removed from the game. Next, we are going to be moving on over to how the DZ is changing and how the mechanics are changing a little bit. There's going to be changes to the loot ratio in the game, where there's going to be a lot less non-contaminated loot and bumping up the amount of contaminated loot. Name bosses will always drop contaminated drops. Rogue cooldown is being taken out as well, but the toggle cooldown will still be present. The contaminated bag is going to be changing from 6 items all the way up to 10, which is pretty freaking awesome there. I'm pretty excited to see it go back to that high number. Sure, our mailbox is going to fill up a lot faster, and it's going to be a lot more dangerous to be carrying so many items, but at least you can do more landmarks and do one big extraction rather than doing a bunch of small ones. The tier 4 perk is also going to be changed in the Dark Zone vendor as well, so that you can reduce the amount of XP lost when you die. DZ brackets are also going to be changing to try and create a much more big and fill up those dark zones with players and make that player density a lot better. They're going to make it so that there's only 2 brackets from this point forward, with levels 1 to 30 and world tier dark zones. That's just how it's going to be. Now, jumping on over to the occupied DZ, damage modifiers are going to be specific to this dark zone as well. And any changes that they make to the damage on weapons and so on is not going to affect normalized dark zones whatsoever, or conflict or anything else. So that's pretty cool that they can have stuff change in this section and not affect the rest of the game. XP loss is being tuned down so you don't lose as much, because I can't tell you how many times that I've managed to go into the occupied dark zone and go down 5 levels in 10 minutes because there's 10 people sitting outside of a checkpoint. Yes, I'm that dumb. I'm that guy that will continue walking out that door. Next on the list is Manhunt and Rogue will be making a comeback in a future update. We don't know when, but that is going to bring back that true original vanilla Dark Zone feeling from the original game. And they're also going to be cutting down on the number of AI patrols in a future update as well to go ahead and make it so that they're not interfering and adding more NPCs to those landmark engagements or into those PvP engagements. They're going to be cut down a little bit. So that's pretty cool. Landmarks are now going to be on a little bit of a cooldown because a lot of people could always continue to farm the same 1 or 2 landmarks over and over and over and over without experiencing the entire dark zone as a whole and not exploring it because the same one pops up 2 seconds after you finish it. So now landmarks are going to be on a cooldown to make things happen there. Next thing, they're also going to make it so that the NPCs aren't going to be as lethal. They're not going to be as crazy, but they're going to have a little bit more survivability to make it so that you still have to put a lot into them and spend a lot of time there, but it's not going to be like they are now where they're like freaking flanking you 10 times harder than what any other activity could possibly be. So yeah, that's pretty freaking exciting to see. Next thing we have is the Thieves Den. Now, I don't know how many of you have actually been able to go ahead and give the guy in the Thieves Den everything he's asked for to get whatever he gives you. I've never been able to do it, but you now have the ability to swap your weapon in the Thieves Den so that before you open up that special ammo box, you can put that special ammo on the weapon of your choice. You couldn't do that before. And perhaps one of the biggest changes coming to the Dark Zone is the fact that it's going to start dropping 515 gear score items, which is 15 levels above level 500 for the World Tier 5 cap. And it is going to make it so that you may even be able to get guns at 515 finally. We don't know until we actually see it in person and see it happen. We'll have to wait and see how it all works out. Jumping on over to Conflict. Armor bars are getting a little bit of a change. They're no longer going to be capped at 10 bars. They're now going to look more like what they look like in your PvE experience, your Dark Zone experiences, where you're going to see a lot more tick marks and more than just 10. Team spawns are now going to be more synchronized, so you're not charging in solo, getting mowed down by an entire team by yourself. And the skill cooldowns are now going to be carrying over across your death. So you can put your turret down, you die, you get that cooldown. When you respawn, you're still going to be on that cooldown until it finishes. It's not going to be an instantaneous, respawn for your skill, which is kind of nice. I guess that's more balanced that way. Next, we're going to go in and talk about exotics and talents because, man, there's a lot of stuff in this section. And I'm just going to go ahead and start with exotics, and then I'm going to hand it on over to Hamish to go ahead and finish this thing up because there's no way in the world I was able to go ahead and catch everything he said. So hopefully you can understand him. All right, so here you go. Exotics. First things first is Terry from Red Storm had a lot to say about this. And basically, he pretty much wanted to say that exotics aren't meant to give the player the most ultimate raw DPS experience and kill everything instantaneously. That was not the intention of exotics. Exotics are meant to feel powerful, unique, and offer brand new gameplay experiences to try and make things a little bit more different rather than just pointing a gun at something, mowing it down, and repeating the system over and over and over. This was to try and create a much more unique experience so that whenever you use an exotic, not only do you feel powerful, but you also have a unique gameplay experience that is different than using any other gun in the game to try and create something new, which is, I think, a great way to experience a game. I mean, hell, how many of you are still using a P416 and not using anything else, or a Vector and not using anything else? See, that's what he's trying to get away from. He wants to make it so that the exotics can be used, and the way he's going to go ahead and try and make that happen is all exotics just got a weapon damage buff. That's right. So exotics are going to be getting a buff in update 3.0, which is pretty freaking awesome there. Again, if you have the PTS, a lot of this stuff is already going to be implemented, and there's going to be 3 total phases, or multiple phases. We don't know how many just yet, but at least 2 for sure. And all this stuff is going to be put in over time to get tested, to get looked at, and to give feedback accordingly. And hopefully we can all get this all sorted and balanced and get ready for that raid and everything that comes beyond that. Now, the talents on weapons and gear talents, this one I got to go ahead and give to Hamish. This is just going to be a direct capture straight on over from State of the Game earlier today. It's a lot to take in. It goes very, very fast. Enjoy it, and I'll be right back. Hamish, take it over, buddy.
All right. Talent name and then changes. Unhinged, damage bonus reduced to 20% from 25%. Handling, negative reduced to 25% from 35%. All right. Strained, the talent, missing armor requirement increased from 10 to 15%. Increased to 10% from 5%. I've already messed it up. Frenzy, in PvE, reloading from empty grants 20% weapon damage instead of 35%, and 15% rate of fire for 3 seconds instead of 35% for 7 seconds. All right. In PvP, reloading from empty grants 15% weapon damage instead of 25%, and 15% rate of fire for 3 seconds instead of 25% for 7 seconds. And I guess that is the PvP and PvE specific changes that Ryan was just talking about. Preservation. In PvE, killing an enemy repairs 10% armor over 5 seconds instead of 5% for 3 seconds. Headshots improve the repair to 20% instead of 10%. In PvP, killing an enemy repairs 5% armor over 3 seconds. Headshots improve the repair to 15%, and it requires 7 defense attributes. The Spike talent, headshot kills grant 35% skill damage for 20 seconds instead of 25% for 10, so that's a huge buff. Requires 5 utility attributes instead of 3. Reformation. Headshot kills increase skill repair and healing by 50% for 20 seconds instead of 25% for 25 seconds, and requires 9 utility attributes. All right, on gear. Critical, reduced critical hit damage bonus from 8% to 5%. Surgical, reduced critical hit chance bonus from 8% to 5%. The Safeguard talent, reduced healing bonus from 75% to 50%, reduced duration from 7 to 5 seconds. Set requirement changed from less than 5 to less than 4 offensive attributes. The Clutch talent, increased health gained per critical hit from 15% to 20%. Reduced armor gained per critical hit from 2% to 1%. The Spotter talent, increased weapon damage to pulsed enemies from 10% to plus 20%. Requirement changed from 3 to 5 utility attributes. The Kneecap talent, shooting an enemy in the legs had a 10% chance to apply bleed. Now it's changed to 15%. The Entrench talent, headshots from cover repair increased from 5 to 10% of your armor. The Patience talent, after being in cover for 5 seconds, armor repairs by 5% every 1 second instead of every 3 seconds, and the requirement has been increased from 5 to 9 defense attributes. The Unbreakable talent, again, this is split between PvE and PvP. In PvE, 70% of max armor is repaired when your armor is depleted. Armor kits used within the next 7 seconds are not consumed, instead of 25% and 5 seconds. All right, for PvP, it's 25% of max armor is repaired when your armor is depleted, and armor kits used within the next 7 seconds are not consumed, instead of 15% and 5 seconds. Now requires 11. That's 11 defense attributes. No other talents affecting armor kits as well. The Bloodsucker, again, split between PvE and PvP. Depleting an enemy's armor adds a stack of 25% bonus armor for 10 seconds instead of 20% for 20 seconds. The max stack increased from 5 to 6. In PvP, depleting an enemy's armor adds a stack of 20% bonus armor for 5 seconds with a max stack of 5, which requires 11 defense attributes instead of 5 offense. So that's a big change, actually. Berserk in PvE, and this is only PvE from what I can see, the 10% weapon damage for every 20% of max armor depleted instead of 10% of max armor depleted. All right. Requires 11 offense attributes and AR, SMG, or LMG equipped. Bloodlust is split between PvE and PvP. In PvE, swapping weapons within 3 seconds of a kill grants 35% weapon damage for 5 seconds instead of 25% for 10 seconds. In PvP, swapping weapons within 3 seconds of a kill grants 20% weapon damage for 5 seconds. Used to require less than 3 defense attributes, but now requires 9 offense attributes instead. And the Blacksmith talent, killing an enemy with your sidearm repairs 50% of your armor, raised from 25%, and it can occur once every 15 seconds, increased from 10. It requires 11 defense attributes instead of 3. Whew. Okay, I know people have...
All right, guys, so after all of that, that's pretty much an entire recap of everything that was put into this week's State of the Game. The PTS is now live for all PC players. Please, I cannot say it enough. If you want this game to be a much better experience, please Try and leave as much constructive criticism as you possibly can. Give the feedback. Let them know. There's a direct forum link that I'll go ahead and post here in the description so you know exactly where to go ahead and put all this stuff, because the developers need every piece of information to try and make sure that not only is this update good, but it's the best it can possibly be to ensure that not only are the Dark Zone, the weapons, the exotics, the talents, the balancing of everything all gets put into place to make sure we have the best possible experience before we get into that ultra hard raid for the very first time. Anyways, guys, thank you all so much for checking everything out. I don't normally make videos this long, but this is by far the biggest information change and balances and all this kind of stuff that's coming to the Division 2 since launch. Again, he was saying it's only 35 days in, but you know what? Man, are we going places. We already got a PTS. We didn't get one for months in the first game. Look at us now. Anyways, guys, thank you all so much for checking everything out. Be sure to go ahead and sign off in the comments down below what you think of the changes and some of the talents that have, gone a complete overhaul, and what you like, what you don't. And yeah, sub for more Division 2 content, and I'll see you all in the next one. Peace out.